that everyone anticipates with excitement and has been looking forward to. And we're pleased to be able to participate in ways that we haven't for some time. I wish for everyone to enjoy these events and for people to exercise caution as these events approach. Our COVID positives continue to rise. We have seen several outbreaks in our schools. This is a public service reminder, really and nothing more. Please consider employing mitigations to protect yourself and your family so that people can enjoy these end-of-year activities as planned. And secondly, a happy birthday to Katie Siegel, if you couldn't already check that out. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. Once again, happy birthday, Katie, from the whole board. All right, now we're moving to our audience comments section. This is the first opportunity for audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card available at the check-in table and give it to the Director of Communications and Strategic Planning, Kathy Kijiji. The Director will call community members who submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship with the district. If a community member in the overflow room wishes to make a comment, they can give their comment card to the D34 staff member on duty in the room. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And also know that the board will be taking notes, but we will be in listening mode only. And an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We ask that you submit 1 comment per opportunity. Kathy, do we have any comments?
We have several.
Thank you.
First up is Otto Reinich. And please use the microphone.
Good. My name is Otto Reines. I live at 510 Washington Street in Glenview and have lived there for 31 years. I have 2 boys that went through the District 34 system. They're now 32 and 27, and the instructor for that. Thank you. I'm also a current District 34 substitute teacher as of about 6 months ago. And each morning, administrators and teachers do the impossible of matching a limited number of substitute teachers to far too many open positions. And this continues to take a toll on students, administrators, and teachers. And if you've never seen that process take place, I encourage you to go to any school in the morning and watch the magic that happens. There are no easy solutions, but I'm here to offer encouragement in the form of suggestions that come from my own limited experience. I apologize if any are redundant. First, regarding financial compensation, if possible, match the daily rate offered by neighboring districts. In addition, offer incentives perhaps for new teachers. For example, a $250 signing bonus earned after 10 completed assignments. But this is only a beginning. Yes, compensation is important, but it must never supersede the importance of recruiting and retaining only those teachers who encourage students along their journey. Continue to be selective, a process that will be made easier with a larger pool of substitute teachers. Regarding recruitment, promote the opportunity and create awareness of the need through the community. Work with community-based newspapers, newsletters, and online websites. Cooperate with other institutions such as service clubs, the library, sports programs. Offer informational meetings to answer questions almost every new substitute teacher has. My wife is a retired first grade teacher and a current sub. She answered my questions like, what's a lesson plan? I had never seen a lesson plan before. How do I use technology? What does a typical day look like? What's the difference between teaching different grades? And the big question, can I even do this? Use testimonial stories from other teachers, and I notice you do this on the website. Encourage and facilitate referrals. Offer incentives. Maybe have a raffle, monetary, or just plain recognition. In conclusion, substitute teaching is like grandparenting. We show up in the morning, we play with the kids, and at night we go home and turn the kids back over to those who have ultimate responsibility. I'd like to share a brief story. I was getting ready to sub in the 7th grade, and we always receive notes, and sometimes they point out students that might be difficult. And William's name showed up, and that's not his real name, showed up many times. And sure enough, soon into the class, you knew who William was. After a short period, he was dismissed to the hall by the co-teacher, and I thought I would go out there and talk to him. I tried to empathize with him. I said, I probably wasn't much different than you in the 7th grade. I said, you get in trouble when you go home to mom and dad. And he said, I don't have a dad. And I said, do you mind, can I ask what happened? He said, he died when I was 4 years old. Sorry, I get emotional here. Now I'm breaking protocol, and I may get in trouble with you, but I said, William, can I give you a hug? And sure enough, he came over, and we embraced. And my point is, the best substitute teachers understand the powerful role that we can play in a child's life. I believe they are out there right now in the community waiting to serve. Like me, though, they have questions and they have doubts. Many thought this was never for them, but they are out there. They're waiting to serve and to be called, and I hope my comments tonight will help you help them answer that call. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for being a substitute teacher.
You're very welcome.
Next we have Anna Ortiz.
Hello, good evening, and I'm Anna Ortiz, and some of you may recognize me for speaking at a board meeting back in October. And I'm back because of the amazing progress me and my friends have made. My friends and colleagues will talk about several other topics, but I want to start right now by talking about how we have been working with Lauren Peters, who is a government relations director at the American Heart Association. She has been assisting my group as in who to contact and what pieces of legislation we need to work on passing in the multiple bodies of government that have the power to change the lunches. And the AHA is clearly in favor of our ideas, several of which include school gardens, farmers markets, offering veggies to kids 2nd grade and younger, food from the Asian and Hispanic communities because of their large populations in Glenview. We also have ideas to include halal and kosher foods to offer inclusion for students of different religions. Some kids don't have the option to pack their own lunches, but because of the unhealthy options and the lack of choice, some kids just end up eating one of the products in their lunch, such as the crackers or the fruit. So some students may be learning just as well on the food that on the little amount of food that they ate if they didn't eat lunch at all. I am one of these people, and on days they serve the Bosco sticks, I can't eat them because of the poor quality cheese that makes me sick. I also can't get the yogurt cheese stick muffin option because of the amount of dairy in my dairy allergy. So some days I only eat crackers for lunch. I'm lucky that my lunch is towards the end of the day, but what of the others? Please consider the information that we are offering you because there are lots of students who are backing us as well as teachers. We are grateful for the small changes you have made, but in the end, this is a big issue and we need a lot more, and there's a lot more work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next we have Zayna Hafiz.
Hello, my name is Zayna Hafiz, and I go to Hoffman Elementary School, and I am a colleague of Anna. I joined the Hoffman Student Activists because I wanted to make the lunches healthier, tastier, and religion or opinion friendly. I am going to talk about how the food at Hoffman isn't halal, kosher, and vegetarian friendly. Like out of the school lunch cycle, 6 out of 10 days have meat in their lunches. And if you can't eat it, you have to get the side options which lack quantity, quality, and nutritional value. Sometimes it feels a little frustrating. It sometimes feels like the school does not recognize these needs of mine and others. I honestly wish that the school would make a halal, kosher, or vegetarian option. Because many of the foods in these diets are similar, though each of these diets are unique and special. Another thing I would like to touch base is on the fact that there are large Asian and Hispanic communities, but there is never any food there's never any food to represent them. Why don't we make everyone feel included with the food we serve? As a student, it's upsetting to see this. I can't imagine how some students may feel because of the lack of representation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ravi Gill.
Hello, my name is Ravi Gill. I go to Hoffman Elementary School, and I am a part of the Hoffman Student Activist Group, working to change the school lunches. I'm here with Anna Ortiz and a few others. I know all these people for a while, and we work very well together. I am here to support all of our ideas to better the school lunches. I joined this group because I wanted to not only improve the quality of the school lunches, but to give more options with an improved nutritional value. We have found some weird stuff in the school lunches, such as bones in the meat products, tar-like substances in the mac and cheese, and produce that is rotten and bruised. But I'm not here to talk about the bad stuff in the school lunches. That won't do us any good. We have to find solutions. Like I said before, we want to improve the nutritional value of the food that is eaten, which is why it is key to not just make the main item or option better, but to also improve the side options. This means finding a way to incorporate clean, healthy, and fresh fruits and vegetables into the meals that we eat through community gardens or other interactive elements or events. We want to stress that we are not blaming or pressuring any food service personnel in any way, shape, or form, and that we would like to thank them for all the wonderful things that they do for our schools and making sure that lunch is provided to those who need it. Thank you again for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
Nashilowski.
Hello, my name is Maya Nashilowski. I'm a student at Hoffman Elementary School. I'm part of the Hoffman Student Activist Group. When I first heard that Anna was working to improve school lunches, I thought that was a great idea because let's face it, school lunches are not the best. I personally don't buy school lunches, but I know they are not the best quality. So later on, I joined this group. I'm here today to talk about legislation of eliminating the lowest bid rule. What this means is that we don't have to worry about taking away extra money to buy better, high-quality lunches. The lunches right now are not good quality. There's mold in them, some are old, and there's not much options, like if you're lactose intolerant or if you're a vegetarian. It would be better if we put our health in front of spending less money for poor quality lunches. We also have spoke with Senator Fine, and she is also supporting this issue. I hope you consider spending more money to buy healthier lunches. Thank you for listening. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And next is Vivian Blanchard.
Hello, I'm a colleague of Anna's, and I'm here today to talk about student support for Anna's campaign about better school lunches. My name is Vivian Blanchard, and I am 11 years old. I go to Hoffman Elementary School as a 5th grader, and I am here today to support Anna Ortiz in our ones for healthier school lunch options. I joined the Hoffman Student Activists because I kind of just got fed up with the lunches because they had been bothering me for a while. But to know that someone else was standing up for better lunches, that motivated me to join. Well, I'll be honest. Most kids in our school dislike our lunches. They're soggy, bagged, smelly, and sometimes, according to the people who currently eat the lunches, maybe even rotten or moldy. I feel that the students' opinions are really important in this situation because after the survey we took over the course of school days, we found out how many students agree with us and all. This is proof of over 100 5th graders signing this, agreeing that they aren't fans with the lunches. This really matters because if kids aren't liking what they're eating, they will get the impact of not being able to focus or have enough energy to complete the day. Kids should want to be excited and they should be excited and want to get lunch and eat their food, but from what I'm hearing, it's not so exciting. In summary, most kids support this idea of healthier and better quality school lunches. Student support should not be a barrier in the path to healthier and better quality school lunches. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the final comment.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for your comments. All right, we're going to move along to our section F, consideration of resolutions. I'm going to read the resolutions. I'm going to ask for a motion and a second for approval, and then I'm going to ask for a roll call vote at the end. I have the 22036 personnel report. I have the 22037 payroll warrants report. I have the 22038 vendor warrants. I have the 22039 summer learning grasp. I have the 22040 consolidated district plan and the 22041 board meeting calendar. Is there any questions before I ask for a motion? May I have a motion and a second?
So moved, Hagy.
Second, Baumstark.
Kitty, may we have a roll call, please?
Baumstark,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Jack Torowitz,
Aye.
Corman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Now we're moving to G, consideration of other resolutions. We're going to have discussion and action tonight on these. I have, the first one is 22042. It's the resolution declaring the intention to issue not to exceed 9.5 million working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and directing that notice of such intention be published in the manner provided by law. Is it Eric?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to invite Elizabeth Hennessy from Raymond James to join us on the guest stand as we...
Everyone remember Liz? She's our bond guru.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. So the district planned to issue 9.4 million of non-referendum limited bonds as part of its capital plan. This debt extends the district's debt service extension base, so it doesn't increase the annual payments except for CPI, but extends it. It was originally planned to be issued according to our timeline and to the need of district funds in August of 2023. However, if you go up on the memo just to see the interest rate graph, this is, you know, what's happened in the last 6 months, really since January of 2022, right after you completed your last referendum bond issue in December. The interest rates went up, and you know, a little bit dramatically, really. We're kind of back to January of 19 interest rate levels. In fact, the 10-year AAA municipal market data index has gone up over 1.7% or 170 basis points. And so this is due, of course, to inflation and the Fed's efforts to slow down inflation by raising the Fed funds rate. So far this year, they have raised that rate 75 basis points. In June, it is assumed they're going to raise rates again another 50 basis points. Again, that's just the Fed funds rate. So the question is how much of these market movements or Fed rate hikes are already built into the market. And you know, the Fed has said they're going to consider rate increases at every single meeting this year. So I think we have more rate increases in the future and probably increasing interest rates. On top of this, buyers of municipal bonds are, you know, unhappy that their investments have lost value, so they're not anxious to buy right now. So it's a tough time, but the future is probably going to result in higher rates. The other thing to know is that the 1 year, the 10-year, and the 30-year rates are all pretty similar. There's not a lot of difference. So short-term rates have come up the most. Long-term rates have come up as well, but not nearly as much. And that means that it's, you know, the yield curve is pretty flat, so borrowing a little longer is not a bad thing. So what we're going to compare in this analysis is simply issuing the bonds now in August of 22 versus waiting a year and doing it in 23 using today's interest rates. So issuing the bonds sooner in option 1 to close on August 1 of 2022 has a total net debt service cost at today's April 12th rates plus a 75 basis point cushion. We're using the same rates on each option of $12,576,500, estimated all-in true interest cost of 3.67%. Option 2 of issuing the bonds as scheduled in August of '23 has a total interest cost that's $12,038,500, or about $538,000 less. So issuing bonds sooner under the same interest rate conditions means you're going to pay interest longer. That's why option 1 is higher, issuing the bonds now versus waiting for option 2. However, if interest rates increase by 0.56%, we're going to be equal in terms of these two options. So what we have to ask ourselves is, how much do we think interest rates are going to increase over the next year? And, you know, based on what they've increased over the past 6 months of 1.7%, I think it's likely that, you know, Fed's attempts to control inflation are going to continue, and we're going to see higher interest rates. So for that reason, we recommend moving ahead now to lock in this $9.4 million. It still can be paid back over 10 years, which was always our original plan. And that's because we've got higher CPI and a higher debt service extension base. So with that, I'll pause and answer any questions on market or this recommendation.
Does anyone have any questions for Liz?
So we would just hold the funds in some savings account for the year? Is that
Well,
how you issue and then just hold them?
You know, you have to spend 5% of them in 6 months and 85% of them in 3 years. Luckily, you've got so many projects going on that you can do that. So, you know, you would be investing some of it, but you would be spending it all along to meet the federal tax law requirements.
So your choice of a break even here of 0.56% over a year, that also includes a 75 basis point cushion, correct?
Yes, but in both options.
In both options. So
Right.
if we actually end up getting a lower rate because the cushion's a little high, the break even is much higher, right?
So.
I mean, the break even's lower. The break even could go down to like 25 basis points.
Oh, yeah, yes. As rates go up, the break even gets lower.
Right.
So it's.
But we all know the Fed overshoots long and they overshoot short. So I can't imagine that they wouldn't keep raising rates too quickly. I think this is a great deal for the taxpayer if we could issue as soon as possible. Anyone else? All right.
And so just to lay that out, we would have, we would pass a resolution tonight. We'd have, start the petition period, 30 days, have the hearing on June 21st, and then we could have a special meeting a week later after the petition period, so the board could pass that resolution to allow us to go to market.
And everyone has seen that email about the possible special meeting on the 29th, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
We appreciate.
Jim, were you going to say something?
No, well, just, it feels like too, just the upside risk of it going up even higher. Like, the rates are unlikely to go down a lot from here.
Right.
They might stay the same, and then in that case, you're kind of, and this is a pretty small impact, but you're taking the risk of an extreme spike off the table, which I think is a good idea. So like from a risk, just from a risk perspective, it's good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost a lot. And it might actually be favorable.
Right. It may end up being cheaper,
Cheaper.
probably in the long run. And we can look at that in a year, right?
We will indeed.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I would like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the resolution declaring the intention to issue not to exceed 9.5 million working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and directing that notice of such intention be published in a manner provided by law. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mike Corman.
Second?
Second, Hagee.
And may I have a roll call?
Peggy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Corman,
Aye.
Jack Torowitz,
Aye.
Tom Stark,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Nice to see you all.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
us. Thank you. Our next resolution is 22043, award construction contracts.
Okay, Dave Torres, Nick Papa Nicholas Jr.
So I just want to put some feedback. We talked about this last month. We voted on doing something, and you guys are going to talk to us about it again, correct?
Yeah, so we took action in March and I'll kind of recap that if that's all right, just to kind of bring us up to speed. But thank you all for having us this evening. We appreciate your time. We've got quite a bit of information to go through, so I'm going to do my best to kind of bring you all up to speed with our current progress as it relates specifically to phases 2 and 3, while also providing you with some high-level projection of the total referendum costs and to walk you through the next steps as we see them taking place throughout the end of the year. So again, to kick things off, just want to talk a little bit about what took place back in March. So we recapped 4 separate base bids, all part of phases 2 and 3. And phasing gets quite complicated, so I'm going to do my best to just kind of give you a little bit of that just as it so you can recognize it as it comes up later in the presentation. So base bid 1 was the 2 phases of work between years 22 and 23 that takes place at the primaries. That's Hanking Line and Westbrook. Base bid 2 included 2 phases of work to be completed in 2022 and 2023 at the intermediates. That's Hoffman, Glen Grove, and Pleasant Ridge. Base bid 3 included 2 phases of work at Atia, while base bid 4 included just a single phase of work to be completed in 2022 at Springman. So back in March, base bids 1 and 4 were approved at the bid amount with an understanding that we were going to go back at that point to the contractors to reduce the contingencies, to eliminate the bonds, and then to negotiate values. So as we kind of get deeper into this, I'll explain a little bit on the cost savings dollar amounts. But we approved those 2 base bids with an understanding that for base bids 2 and 3, we would plan to rebid in the summer while altering the timeline for all the work to be completed in the summer of 2023 with the hope of ultimately saving about $2 million. So that said, as we went through the exercise, working with contractors for base bids 1 and 4, we felt that it would be in the district's best interest to look into finding ways to negotiate those other 2 base bids as well. So in March, I mentioned that we'd be looking to potentially bring to you select bid packages for approval ahead of a rebid. So as we spent the better part of March and April taking some real deep dives into the schedule of values, which is all the cost information that the contractors to provide to us so that we can get a better understanding of where all the dollars are at. So we spent a lot of time looking through those documents as well as having conversations with them about what the overall impacts were going to be on a rebid. And based on those conversations, we're continuing to see costs increase. Gas prices, material pricing. I'm getting calls weekly by contractors with no end in sight. So that said, we felt that the conservative approach would be to see if we could negotiate to that $2 million number or better. So in having conversations, we were able to get to about $2.5 million in savings between base bids 2 and 3. So tonight, the resolution is really just about base bid 2, which is at the intermediates. And so at this time, 7 of the 8 bid packages equals a total savings of about $1.5 million that we've been able to secure at this point. So to take the risk out, we're recommending approval of those bid packages, while the one bid package that we did not negotiate, which was the HVAC, would be rebid then later this summer as originally planned. And just for reference, that bid package was about $5.7 million worth of work. So that said, as part of our, you can go ahead and switch sides for me. As part of our continued review of the overall referendum costs, right now in this moment in time, given what we've seen from bidding across the board, increases 23, 25%, we've made a series of assumptions to come to a projected total referendum cost of about $184 million for all the remaining phases. So we're at We still got phases 3 through 7 that have yet to be designed, and just to kind of unpack those a little bit. So we've got 3 phases left in Springman. We've got the district office still to go, and then there are several summers of roofing work that are planned for the future. So again, at that $184 million number, we continue to track a series of projected cost savings offsets to help bring that number down. So all these numbers are listed here, and I won't go too deep into all of them. Some of them are self-explanatory, and I'll run through all these slides, and then like in March, we can open it up for discussion and questions. But going through them quickly, the ESSER funding is pretty straightforward with how that offsets the cost. For phase 1, I understand several of you were able to take a tour, which is great. We carried about 5% construction contingencies for that project. We were able to pull out about 1.5 of that. That's already been returned to the district, so that's actual realized savings to date. For phase 2 and 3, the contractor negotiation and allowance reduction, this speaks to that conversation. Of that $4.5 million, that's spread across the 4 different base bids. So for base bids 1 and 4, which we previously approved, there's about $2 million of that 4.5 that's allocated towards base bids 1 and 4. For base bid 2, which is the intermediates, there's about $1.5 million, and then for ATIA, there's another $1 million in savings that we were able to negotiate. So that brings to that total of $4.5 million. The phase 2 and 3 VE deductive RFPs, again, back in March, I kind of mentioned that there were some deductive alternates listed at the time of bid that we didn't feel were bid appropriately or correctly. So FGM issued some deductive RFPs, which for base bids 1 and 4, we have been able to get those numbers. We've reviewed them as a team, along with a few other value engineering options and ideas to realize about $1 million in savings. Again, that's for base bids 1 and 4, so that's an actual. Those deductive RFPs are in the process of being issued. The other $1 million is a projection based on what we anticipate for VE, and going through the same exercise of deductive RFPs for base bids 2 and 3. Phases 4 through 7, the potential allowance reduction as part of the original estimate done back in 2019, 2020, we landed on about 5% contingencies being included with each bid package. So an assumption that can be made here, based on that 5%, if we're able to return 25% of that, that's a $400,000 savings. And then this last item, as it relates to projected VE design solutions for future roof work, that's valued at $3 million. So the district's roofing consultant was able to walk all the roofs to determine future phases of roof work, to determine the lifespan and whether or not they would be able to go with an alternate roof coating solution in lieu of replacement. And this recommendation from him is that we could go forward with that solution, which would save $3 million and still provide the district with 20-year warranties for that change. And if there are any other specific questions on that one, I think FGM could probably help on that. If you want to go next slide for me, Eric. So again, with all these offsets, that brings us to just a snapshot in time, a total referendum projected total cost of about $172 million. As far as the assumptions go, again, just for today, that assumes that the cost savings that was identified in that $4.5 million all moves forward. It assumes 25% of additional escalation costs for all the future remaining phases. That's for the roofing, for Springman, and for the district office. The 5% contingency with the 25% return that I mentioned, and then moving forward with the roofing scope. Lastly, as I mentioned, Springman hasn't completed its design yet. We kind of held off right about 100% DD. So we have some flexibility there for scope modification and refinement. So this includes just a couple of tweaks to the original design intent as it relates specific to the HVAC systems and the kitchen and cafeteria renovation. Next steps. So for tonight, again, the ask is based on base bid 2. We're looking to approve just those packages that have been listed. for you for base bid 2 while we rebid the HVAC package late this summer for all work to be completed in 2023. At this point in time, we are holding on ATIA, not losing sight of it by any means. However, there's additional conversations and discussion that has to be had kind of concurrently with the overall design efforts of Springman as we move forward. So as far as our remaining work and timeline and scope, one of the first things we would really like to get accomplished is reestablishing the baseline budget. We've just seen so much change, even in these last 6 months, so that as we work collectively with the design team to develop the remaining scopes of work, that we can reestimate to come up with real numbers, hard numbers, as well as completing, that cost estimating effort to reevaluate the remaining work. As far as our future phases and bidding timelines go, this is part of just some upcoming discussion that we're planning to have. At this point in time, we have 3 phases of work left at Springman. We'd like to see FGM move forward to complete their design while we work with them on finding any and all cost-saving options and levers just to bring these costs down to hopefully be at a point where around late this fall we can re-estimate with several different options and then bring them to the board, of course, for review as it relates to Springman. So we would be designing, estimating for the rest of this year while we would look to complete design and then ultimately go out to bid with the remaining Springman work in 2023 to complete all 3 phases of work in one summer as opposed to breaking it up into 3 for all work to be completed in 2024. So Springman's timeline originally was going to be split so that over the course of 5 summers we were completed by 2025. So at this point, we're looking to potentially finish ahead of that, but it's all going to be contingent on these upcoming discussions that we have regarding the scope and design development moving forward into the fall. And that's pretty much it. I mean, at this point, we're still projected to be over budget, and we're continuing to facilitate the conversations necessary as a team to find ways to continue bringing these costs down by exploring any and all opportunities that we have with the scope of work that remains. So at this point in time, if you guys have any questions or comments, we can go back to slides.
I just want to ask a question. So originally, am I correct to assume that when we projected this back when we had the referendum, our project was going to be $150 million, correct? I'm just saying, it was about $150 million. Yeah. And your worst case scenario that you kind of pointed out right now with all the assumptions that were made, you came to the $171,600, correct?
Taking in all those cost savings.
Yes.
Correct.
All the cost savings and a possible escalation in costs of 25%.
Correct.
Which is a projection.
Yes.
Okay. And then, and tonight, what we're talking about approving is the projects we asked to rebid, you negotiated savings of approximately $2.5 million. Is that what I'm?
So the 2.5 would be for both base bids 2 and 3. What's on the docket for tonight is just base bid 2, because base bid 3 is a TIA, and we need to maintain that flexibility with a TIA depending on how conversations go with Springman as well. And as the overall budget continues to evolve and the discussions continue, that's why we're holding on a TIA right now. So the base bid 2 savings is really worth the $1.5 million.
Okay. And the reason we had that vote in March is to possibly try and get our costs down, and that's something you were able to do in the last 2 months.
Correct.
Does anyone else have any other questions that they need clarified? Mike first.
Just because of something you just said, Dave, the hold on a TIA, is that your judgment and decision, or is that a decision that we are eventually going to be making?
As of right now, that's just a decision based on what we know in terms of flexibility with scope, because with the intermediates, there's really nothing that we can do there. I mean, we have the educational improvements to the classrooms, the renovation work, And then at ATIA, we have the labs and the classroom improvements as well. But that was collectively kind of what we decided should move forward at this time is just base bid 2. So
really, just for clarity's sake, for the board and for the community, we're talking about 1.5 million, not 2.5
correct.
million.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
we're talking about 1.5 million.
Yes.
Nick, question for you. At the macro level, you mentioned in a recent meeting that school construction is a small world. What's that world talking about from a school's perspective, from an owner's perspective into 2023, 2024? Are school districts saying, whoa, hang on, we're going to pull back from either referenda or from spending because of what the inflation that we're seeing?
Yeah, no, great question. We are not seeing that pullback. We as Nicholas are involved with many potential referendums that are pending, specifically Arlington Heights District 25, Palatine District 15. Substantial referendums are being considered and put out to the community there. I think the one unique challenge that we exist, I think first off, I'll make a comment. Our budget challenges aren't specific to Glenview District 34. It is across all school districts and really all industries. We unfortunately set these budgets in 2019. So we've been dealt these cards. It is a daily, weekly, monthly active process to continue to try to drive down costs. So we as Nicholas treat every dollar like it's our own dollar. We take great pride in trying to deliver. I think one of the questions, I think you may have even posed it to me pre-referendum, what is our history of bringing in projects to the referendum dollars? And I said 100%. And I'll say that, I'll continue to say that, I'll be proud of our past experience, but we've dealt with unforeseen challenges here that we've never experienced before. So the temperature is still hot. I think districts are still moving forward with life safety, modernization, expansion, athletics. We're not seeing a slow up with that. We are seeing additional budgeting and projects getting out earlier, kind of some of the things we talked about, getting first out on the street to eliminate. There's only so many contractors in the Chicago market. So as soon as those contractors hit their capacity, if they are still going to pursue public or private work, it's going to be at a premium. And so, to Dave's point, once we did a deeper dive into these numbers, and I think off the hip I threw out that $2 million savings at the March board meeting. Once we were able to surpass that number, we thought it was our responsibility to at least bring that option forth to the board to say we're going to mitigate any additional spike, kind of how Liz just talked about the interest rate environment, because is it worth rolling the bones on another public bid opening and it coming in worse? And that's a legitimate threat. So we thought it was the best to move this forward for a recommendation.
So in my perspective is when we're thinking about school work, there's that is yet to go in front of the voters, and that has gone in front of the voters and been approved. And those are very different buckets. So I don't know where Arlington Heights or some of these other districts are, but if they've not been voted on by the voters, I'm not even considering those into the mix of available work. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I'll say this then, to put this in perspective. Our backlog for public K-12 work for 2023 surpasses our backlog for our work of 2022.
Okay,
that's
good.
Without the referendums.
Okay, that's important to know. That's really good information. So for the larger board, and for John and I have spent a fair number of hours over the last month or two talking with Dave, talking with Mr. Miller, talking with Dane, talking with Scott about this. And one of the things that I've reinforced to everyone that I've spoken with is we've had a very deliberative, thoughtful process from the beginning, even before I came on the board, from the facilities rec process all the way through to today. So I want to reinforce to the board, this is not like a sharp left turn. This is, we were able to take a pause. We were able to find some money. I've done some back of the envelope analysis with some numbers that Dave gave me. The difference between the labor cost and the commodities cost or the equipment cost is about 2/3 and 1/3. The labor cost isn't going to change much because it's mainly covered by union contracts. So that's pretty, not fixed, but it's much more fixed than the commodities. If you look at the total in commodities between those two phases, actually let's just do the first phase 3. Commodities work out to be about $6 million out of the 18 million or so dollars. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you were able to find essentially 1.5 million out of what was the original was 19 and a half. Do I have that right in my head? Those commodity numbers that you gave me that don't include your overhead and bond.
Oh, yeah, that total, I'm unsure. I mean, the total for base bid 2 was about 22 million for.
Right. So and what John and I have spoken about at length is what's going to happen to commodity prices, right? And are we potentially leaving money on the table if prices of steel, lumber, other commodities drop like a rock? I've done a fair amount of research with the Association of Builders and Constructors as well as the Association of General Contractors, the union and non-union versions of the industry organizations. And aside from softwood lumber, we're not seeing any softening in prices. Everything is going up. Steel mill products 107% since February of 2020. Overall, 41.2% across all categories. So I've come around to the idea that this is a good deal for the district. My question about a TIA was, do we just take that on board now, understanding the marketplace? Your comment about backlog is an important one to me. Do we lock that $1 million savings in now and figure out the rest later is really where my head is. Because you found $1 million. I don't know that you're going to get much more. So I will leave it at that.
I do not believe we're looking for an action to reject a TIA tonight. So I think if we wanted to have some further dialogue over the next month, I'm confident that the contractors would honor their bids and give us the opportunity to continue to discuss it and to run it to ground and then come back in June for an action item if the board wanted to consider approval.
I'll defer to Dane and Eric on that. The other point I wanted to make sure we get across, and Eric and I spoke about this at length the other day, is your engagement, John and I's engagement with the deeper design process, and I'd like to make sure you cover that as part of this discussion.
Yeah, and so just to touch on that, what we're trying to do is provide as many levers as we reach these final stages. There's only a couple months worth of design left for future phases of Springman. What I said to Mr. Corman was that we could start to work together even more frequently, really collaborate over these next couple months before we sort of pull up. These guys finish their design, we get it back over for estimates, and the idea was around November we could come to the board with new estimates for Springman and potentially a rebid for a TIA to make those final decisions about how the end of the project would go. But to your point, just working closer together sort of more than ever now as we start to wrap up.
John?
Yeah. So I just want to pare this down to tonight. So we're talking about bid package 2, which in March we came here and we decided that it was a good idea to push that back a year and either rebid or you were going to renegotiate on our behalf. And so, we thought, maybe we could get $2 million out of that and we'd be just gambling about commodity prices. We might win, we might lose. So setting commodity prices aside and just looking at the labor, where those savings can come in. So what you're coming back and saying, like, you would rather not rebid, you still want to push it back a year and then lock in, we got a bird in the hand at 1.5 million versus 2 in the bush. I mean, do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct for base bid 2.
I appreciate the efforts to get that bird in the hand. I'm sure it wasn't completely easy. So.
It was a long 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, most contractors don't like to cough up 1.5 million from my experience. So, okay, good job.
I'm sorry.
I was just, and there's still possibility of more savings with bid package 3, is that?
So with bid package 3, there's a little more strategy involved with ATIA. So I really do feel like the conversations kind of have to be had
In tandem with more discussion on how you're...
On Springman, yep. Like those two, I feel like we need to just kind of sort through as we look at just the overall costs and getting to a number that works.
Okay. Dane, did you want to?
So, yeah, I think it's also important to signal that the costs associated with all of these projects, which everyone knows has been an immense undertaking, something that we are obviously very proud to be in a position to do. But the costs are trending in the wrong direction, and we need to just say that simply. We must continue to engage in value engineering and finding ways to save money on the remaining projects that we have. Even with that, there is a likelihood that we are going to need to spend more. Now, how much more is an open question, because there's a few more months of work to be done here. But there is the very real possibility that the board will have to consider additional contribution of funding or removing scope, which would be something that the board's going to have to consider if we get to that. And again, we have a few more months to unpack the remaining work, but I have a responsibility to clearly signal that to the board, that it may be a combination of both.
Diane?
I assume we're going to continue looking at flex on scope as we go on, and that'll be part of our ongoing discussion.
Yes.
Jim?
Yeah, I just have this is more of a sort of a 10,000 foot comment, just like the economics. So Dane's point about needing to maybe spend more, and like the budget number of 171, that's like 21 million higher than what we thought when we did the referendum. I just want to backtrack. When we pre-issued the debt for this referendum, it was when rates were, I think we got 91 basis points, 0.9%, and I think those bonds today are trading at 3.5, something like that. So we captured roughly, I just did a back of the envelope calculation, $20 million worth of interest savings by doing what we did on the interest. So like, I know there's different buckets of money and it's hard to account for all the pieces, but in some ways I feel like even though this is more expensive, we saved about the same amount on the debt piece. And if you add all the economics together, we're not really that worse off. I don't know, it's just maybe
I would say based on the original promise when we went to referendum,
we're there.
We're there.
We're there. It's just
but we just don't have that
different
money.
Places now. Yeah, we don't.
We've done a great job issuing debt. We also ran into trouble here with commodity prices.
So I try and put that high level perspective on when we're thinking about this too, so we don't. And the problem is the debt issuance decision is behind us, so it feels like that it's kind of done and gone, and this thing is in front of us and the biggest issue. But when you add the two together, we're at the promise we made during the referendum. Is the point I wanted to make.
That's a good point to make, and I'm glad you made it, along with Dane clarifying that this is going to be more expensive. I'm going to ask right now, maybe Dane and Eric, to maybe talk to CFAC to get us a better perspective, because we've been talking about operating a budget deficit that we have going forward in the last few presentations. Some new levers have changed. The TIF has rolled off. We've gotten different federal money. The buckets are different. Maybe we could get a better, clear picture of what our fund balance looks like going forward as we start to have this discussion about costs, maybe spending more money.
Yep.
Is that
sounds good?
Okay. I'm not giving you a time frame,
Yep.
but this is heating up, and maybe by August we can have a clear picture.
Sounds good.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Because it's there's money coming in, but we know money's going to be going out. So,
Scott, can I make one last point?
Certainly.
I wanted to acknowledge again the subcontractors and put a little light on the process. Public bidding's public bidding. Usually the way it works is contractors show up to a bid opening. It's a public setting. The envelopes are ripped open in front of a group. Numbers are read aloud, and a recommendation is brought forth to a Board of Ed. Negotiating base bid numbers, while it's legal, is not typical. And so the process that we've instituted here has required a lot of personal hand-holding, massaging of these subcontractors. If it wasn't for Glenview District 34, this is a highly sought-after project. It's a highly sought-after place to work. Contractors are motivated to do these projects. We've built a career, starting with my father 43 years ago, of maintaining these relationships. I believe these subs have really treated the project and really treated the district well, because they really didn't have to do this, but they wanted to, because we all feel personally responsible to try to deliver. So I just wanted to acknowledge them, because they're really putting a good faith foot forward, and we're giving them the security that we're in this together and that they're not on the island alone, to eliminate any of those, the fear of the unknown. We've eliminated that risk and gave them the confidence to give us that discount. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you very much. And I also want to say, I went on a tour today, and it's pretty amazing. If you guys haven't done it, what has already been done it's great. It's great work, and the school district's going to be much better off in a few years. I also want to really thank Mike and John, because they put in a lot of work with you guys every week, and on the construction subcommittee. It's gotten a lot harder than it was supposed to be, but thanks. I appreciate all your hard work too.
Hasn't everything?
Everything has, yes. All right, so any more questions? If not, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve the award of construction projects. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Baumstark.
Seconded, Mike Corman.
May I have a roll call?
Stefani.
Aye.
Peggy.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Corman.
Aye.
Derek-Torowitz.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out tonight again, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, we'll go to 22044, Unified Insights Contract Approval. Matt?
This is the Comprehensive Data Analytics Tool add-on for Power School. A memo was included, I think, last week to everyone to kind of peruse the details and the justification for this particular add-on. And it just brings us a deeper and closer sense to our student achievement, attendance data, behavioral sort of perceptions, and other opportunities for our responsive and MTSS system.
Does anyone have any questions? James?
I guess broadly, do these data not exist currently, and how is it going to change how we engage and support our students? The data exists in disparate locations and different systems. This tool allows it to basically merge together, and much of it is friendly in the sense that we can drop menus and combine different data sources to create new pictures of either buildings or pockets of children. We can do that right now with a tremendous amount of back-end work from a person like Nick Peranti, where he's custom making these opportunities for us in Power School. This is really the friendliest approach to as much data as we can consume and analyze and then take action on. And who's going to own the responsibility for those actions, Matt? Sorry, can you say it again? Yeah, so who's going to own the responsibility for those actions? So if we see something, right, who's looking, who's asking the questions so that Nick's not doing it, but they can go in? Is it parents? Is it teachers? Is it faculty, administrators, support staff? Like, who's going to be using this as a regular consumer of the information so that we can make sure that there's that actionable insight expected for the cost of the data extension? For sure, yeah. Initially, it will be the administrative team, building leadership, the district leadership. At some point, we're going to sort of figure out the best application in terms of the MTSS teams at each building.
The teacher potential, I think, is way off into the future, but it is an opportunity. They do have sort of a process that can drill down to an individual child, if you will. I don't necessarily see this either as a parental element. There is a dashboard capability that we might take advantage of as some outward-facing data, but I think for the beginning stages, it will be a lot of administrative work.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Thanks. Any other questions? I'm gonna wait for Mike. I'm just gonna ask for a motion and a second to approve the Unified Insights contract.
So moved, Heggie.
A second, Jack Horowitz, and Mike is on his way.
Yeah, I figured he'll be back. All right, so we're gonna ask for a roll call vote on that, but
when he comes in,
he
he
comes
can
in,
cast a vote.
He's here. All right.
Nolan,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Jack Horowitz,
Aye.
Tom Stark,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Corman.
Aye, and I did read the proposal, so I am aware.
Thank you. Motion carries. Now we'll move along to 22045, Summer 2022 Services for Middle School English Learners. Raquel?
Good evening. Today we would like the board to consider and approve supplemental summer programming for our middle school students. We will be using Title I 1003A funds, specifically tagged for supporting Hispanic students in a middle school setting, along with a recent award from the bilingual department that we need to spend by August 31st. So we'll be braiding the federal funds to support this summer experiential learning that our partners at Youth Services will be providing to our incoming 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Does anyone have any questions? No? Thank you, Raquel. May I ask for a motion and a second to approve these?
So moved, Dolan.
Second, Stefani.
May we have a roll call vote, Katie?
Tom Stark,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Corman,
Aye.
Jack Horowitz,
Aye.
Nolan,
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we'll move to number 25, 22046, Board Policy 7:180. It's a draft update. Mary?
Yeah, I can speak to this. This update is referencing our prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. We submit our policy to ISB every year, and it came back with 3 deficiencies with 3 minor changes that they want us to update. A statement that we believe that bullying is contrary to state law, a statement that our policy is consistent with other policies, and then just tightening up some language with how the steps that we use to respond to bullying. So the changes were very minor and presented in the update.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, may I ask for a motion and a second to accept the draft update for Board Policy 7:180?
So moved, Mike Corman.
Second, Heggie.
And may I have a roll call vote?
Corman,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Jack Horowitz,
Aye.
Tom Stark,
Aye.
Nolan,
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Motion carries. And now I'm going to 22047. I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve the action on notice to remedy for staff member Eva Guinness as described in executive session.
So moved.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, Katie?
Stefani,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Jack Horowitz,
Aye.
Corman,
Aye.
Peggy,
Aye.
Nolan,
Aye.
Tom Stark.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we're going to change it up a little bit because we have a lot of people here waiting to give us a presentation. So we're going to go to the Teaching and Learning Update presentation.
Thank you for your patience and for being here.
And for watching how all this goes down.
All right. Oh, not that construction is not super exciting. But This is a whole nother level, so. So, we are really excited. I have an outstanding team here with me tonight. The members will come up and share their different content and opportunities for our teachers and our children and our curriculum instruction. I'm very grateful and appreciative to each person speaking. And really the purpose, the introduction, sadly, or I guess just the nature of everything else, over the last 2 years with COVID and the pandemic, things have ebbed and flowed in weird ways sometimes with teaching and learning curriculum instruction, right? We've all lived it, you voted on it, hybrid, asynchronous, synchronous, all these vocabulary words that we never thought we'd be using or even knowing about, but we did. And while that was happening, of course, we're also moving towards normalcy and what we want, which is in-person instruction every day with our children and our teachers. And so really this is looking at the future, looking at some shifts that have happened over the last 2 years, and some intentional work from our staff, our coaches, in terms of setting up our curriculum for the next cycle, whether that be something that we've designed and we're finally moving forward on, or it's just a natural cycle in terms of the curriculum itself. So that brings us to our literacy stage, and I'm gonna kick it off here. You guys go ahead, take it away.
Katie, this is the best party ever. Thanks for having us. So you may have seen these statements before. We've shared them when we've come to other board meetings or other education committees that I know you have joined, but we bring it back because it is true to our work as we set out to implement our K-8 literacy plan. And especially if you see tonight readers and writers, to know they have choice and voice. You saw some writers tonight that showed that they had courage and voice and the skills beyond our classrooms to come to a board meeting and share how they feel about something to make a difference in this world. And that is truly at the heart of everything that we're trying to do with literacy. And we want our students to be in an environment where they're reading and writing a lot and there's joy and purpose behind everything they're doing. And my other incredible coaching colleagues are going to talk a little bit more about specifically where we are at in the process with our literacy implementation plan.
What you see up on the screen right there is something called the Intentional Literacy Framework. It's also referred to as the Balanced Literacy Framework. And what it is it's the connection between reading, writing, and the work that we do around grammar and word study. They're all related, they're all connected, and what we do as coaches and how we plan professional development is to connect those for teachers. Over the last 3 years, we have, I don't know why this is making a lot of noise. We have been supporting teachers around the mini lessons and the structures and routines that happen in writing workshop that has been across all K-5 classrooms. And then the past several years, we have actually supported the reading workshop routine structures and supports for teachers as well for grades 1st through 5th. And then this past year, we supported kindergarten teachers specifically in the area of word study and phonics. So they actually have been implementing units of study to better meet the needs of students. And over the next several years, we'll continue to support teachers around all of these components because they ebb and flow as children's needs change and as the year progresses and their age develops.
All right, there we go. So with literacy small group instruction, that has been our focus this year with our staff development, and then we'll continue with that focus next year, really honing using different data measures to really pinpoint what are going to be specific goals so that we can plan small group instruction that really focuses on what students can do and then what they're ready to do next, so we grow the maximum potential for every student.
Hi, my name is Aaron Wilkins, and I do some work in a number of curricular areas. Thank you.
I'm very excited this evening to say that middle school literacy is on the road toward development. You've seen a lot of updates from our K-5 coaches on the work that they've been doing, and middle school is now on that path. We are aligning, as you saw with the K-8 literacy goals. We are working on shaping our own curriculum. So our current focus is on writing. And what we've done is we've adopted what's called the writing pathways, and it's a guiding text and set of standards that aligns kindergarten through 8th grade. And in that work this year, we've come together for 3 full days, and we've brought together English language teachers, bilingual teachers, special education teachers, and our core ELA content teachers, all in the same room to work on this, because if you're into education, we know that designing things from the beginning with all learners in mind is the way to go. Through that work, we established what we're calling our 6-8 writing team, and we're actually sitting down together and creating writing units in the vein of the units of study that you've seen in K-5, but with a middle school flair, of course. So coming up in 22-23 school year, we'll be working with that team to complete the writing units. And for teachers' part, for the part of the teachers, they'll be using the writing pathways to plan and focus their units. And to get us ready for the changes that are coming, we'll be implementing what are called on-demand writing assessments. And really what these do is they give us a snapshot of where our students are as writers. And most importantly for teachers, as we get ready for the new curriculum that's coming, it allows us to talk about writing in a way that, that is consistent. So we have these really powerful conversations about writing, and it gets the teachers in the mode of preparedness for the curriculum as it's being created. Our goal is to be piloting the units that we are currently working on by trimester 3 of next year. That way it's a lot more fair to the classroom teacher that they don't just show up in the new school year with a new set of things to do. And then once we reach a completion point or a feeling of readiness point with writing, we will move on to do work with the reading curriculum as well.
Hi, my name is Jill Burns. I am the Science Instructional Specialist at Glengrove Elementary. And I'm here with Miss Laura Streets, who is the Science Instructional Specialist at Pleasant Ridge. And we are here to provide you some updates on science across K through 8. Starting with K2 science, the teachers that are in the primary schools continue to use the teacher-created units for their science instruction that were designed by the district K2 Science Committee that ended in 2017. And all of the unit lessons that were created by the committee were designed using the 5E inquiry model. So if you're not familiar with 5E, the 5 E's are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Moving on to intermediate, Laura and I, sorry, I'm forgetting Lisa. Lisa is our colleague who's not able to be with us tonight. We wanted to kind of reintroduce to you the role that we play since 2019 in our intermediate buildings. We directly support the classroom teachers with science content and science instruction. We plan with them. We help with the implementation of the different lessons that we work very hard to design. We intentionally design inquiry-based units. We set up our units to hook our students initially with some type of phenomena that generally many of them are not familiar with, and then move through our process of getting them to ask questions, to discover and explore in trying to come up with answers to those questions on their own. Moving on to planning and creating in our kind of design end of that inquiry-based lesson or activity, and then sharing out with one another. Additionally, we work really hard to help our classroom colleagues be supplied with the materials that they need. We order, we organize, we distribute all the supplies that the classroom teachers utilize for various lessons that we have created.
So over the past 2 years, we have been designing units. So we've designed 12 units for 3-5. And these have been based on the NGSS standards. So we've taken a standard, and we're just going to give you a quick example of how we've done this. So we're using the District 34 increase cycle that you see up there in lovely colorful circles. So this is based on a 4th grade forces and energy unit. So we would take the standard, and we're going to start by creating a phenomenon, like Jill said. Flip to the next slide. And you can just click the video really quick. So we're starting with a phenomenon just to get the kids really curious and interested in what we're going to be studying that week. And then we move on to a question that they're going to be learning about. Oh. So in this case, it was, can energy change from one form into another as it's being transferred? So during the Discovery and Explore section of this, the kids are going to sometimes watch a video to get some background knowledge. They're going to do a lab to get some hands-on exploration. In this case, they went to 9 stations and saw 9 different ways that energy can transfer from one form to another. They had to identify that specific transformation that was going on. And then at the end, we usually try to come up with some kind of create. So in this situation, they were making an energy transfer machine. So we gave them just loads of different materials. They had to create 4 different energy transfers, and the key was to get some kind of transformation in their model. And then they had to show it to their classmates and explain how they did that. Most of them took videos. We're also trying to connect science and literacy together. And this has been great with the new writing program as well, because we've been using the same lingo, the claim, the evidence, and the reasoning. We're really focused on getting students to be more science literate. We build on it from 3rd grade through 5th grade, so that by 5th grade, they're really ready to take the ISA test, which they do in 5th grade. And they are asked to do this on that test as well. So they need to come up with some sort of claim. Usually this happens after a lab, so that they have a lot of evidence that they can use in their explanation. And then they really need to be able to connect and explain it in sentences, how their claim and their evidence connect together.
All right, and finally, to wrap up with 6-8 science, the middle school science teachers also continue to use the teacher-created units that were designed by the District 34 Science Committee, and that those units that were built and that they utilize in their classrooms are also supplemented with the HMH science textbook resource that they all have. Recently, the new middle school schedule prompted a need for reprioritization of the next generation science standards. So a restructuring of the units began about a month ago, so just not too far into the spring here, and will continue to develop into the course of the next school year. And that's it.
Okay. With social studies, K-8, the state adjusted the standards for social science on us again. The overall structure of those standards stayed the same, meaning that they focus on history, civics, geography, and economics. And they remain well, we just had science up here, but science inquiry is kind of built in. Social studies remains the only set of standards where inquiry is actually written out. They are standards that are to be built into practice. Most important probably for here is to understand that it will prompt some changes to the K-5 report card, but most of the standard changes are pretty minor. I'll show you an example of one in a moment. So it's always fun to look back at the little ones, I think. So a current kindergarten history standard is compare life in the past with life today. And this adjusts to read, compare life in the past with life today, including the points of view of diverse groups of people. which is extremely important, particularly in our world as it is now. And it's prompting students to think about the fact that there is no single narrative for the way that things go. And that begins in kindergarten. So we're producing fresh, lovely brains. For K2 social studies, in terms of curriculum, there's no major curricular changes. They maintain their focus on the inquiry structure that I just spoke about. Their use of trade books as a resource, which basically trade books are small readers on a single topic. And then integration with reading and writing. And then, like I say, the standards update will make a couple changes on the report card, but as you just saw, they're fairly minor. From a 3-5 perspective, our contract with TCI, Social Studies Alive, ! That is all part of the title of their name. Our contract with them continues. Right now, we are doing some work with grade level teams, so we've got representatives from each grade level, from each building. We're coming together, and what we're doing is taking a look back at this very strong resource that exists in TCI and our own social studies scope and sequence curriculum map, and just sort of realigning those. There are all kinds of good things that are possible in the resource that we have, and there are all kinds of wonderful ideas that already exist. And so, you know, after a few years, like Matt was saying, to bring these things back together, and honestly to facilitate that for teachers, the grade levels that we're talking about here, they teach everything. It's not like they're social studies specialists. So when we can integrate things as much as possible for them, it really, really helps. And then those adjustments will be in place for next school year. It's already underway. For 6-8, we have a different resource that is Discovery Education. That was just canceled / renewed this year, renegotiated for a small money savings, but mostly because we want to give the teachers a chance to reconsider it in this coming year. But for now, it's the one that continues next year. In terms of exciting work, we have a few teachers who will be attending an institute this summer that's run through the National Council for Social Studies, and it's on their inquiry design model. And the goal is to bring that learning back to the larger group, and then at something like an Institute Day, share that learning and implement some of that learning. But the main goal is to ensure alignment and then to reconsider some of the topics that we are currently doing, because there is a timing change with social studies as well in the new middle school schedule. The other thing that I should mention is with regards to social studies, standards tell us an outline of skills and subject area methods for how we do and how we think in classrooms. You should also be aware that the state mandates particular topics as well. So it's linked there. I assume that you all get the presentation. You can click on these and see what's there. Within the Illinois mandated units of study, that also drives what we do in social studies. It also drives what we do in life skills, which you'll hear from later. And it sets sort of guidelines for a number of topic areas. Our teacher's job is to build skills and content knowledge based in these standards and in the mandates. And as we've mentioned a number of times already, the depth of learning that we experience and that we saw from our students who were here earlier, the depth of learning really comes from debate and inquiry. And our teachers do their best job to sort of walk that line between content and skills. And one of the ways that they really navigate that well is through inquiry, which includes the process of questioning, research, claim, evidence, and sharing. Yep.
Hi. The updates for math that I have to share with you today are mostly revolve around the resources that we're using in K-8. And so for K-5, currently our primary resource is Everyday Math. And while many components of the program do meet our needs, we recognize that it does not meet all the needs of our students, and various D34 educators have expressed interest and seeing what else is out there for our K-5 students. And some areas where we'd like to find a stronger primary resource include the level of rigor provided for our advanced learners, support for our Spanish bilingual students, including resources in Spanish, stronger support for our English language learners in general, and alignment with a Tier 2 or Tier 3 support program for interventions. So our timeline for the pilot for K-5 is on the board there. Teachers will have an opportunity to share their thoughts and comments as we begin the process to look at new resources, and we'll be able to suggest resources for us to consider. During the next school year, 22-23, we will explore what is available and select 2 resources to move forward. And then in 23-24 school year, both of those resources will be piloted in select classrooms at all 6 of our elementary schools. And those that do not pilot one of the resources will continue to use everyday math. A decision on which resource to adopt will be made in the spring of 2024, and then the new resource will be adopted and implemented in the fall of 2024. So that's for K-5. And 6-8 has kind of something similar going on. The primary resource right now in 6th through 8th grade was adopted in 2015. That was Digits, which was from Pearson at the time, who has now changed to Savvis. And Digits became obsolete as of the end of the 2021 school year, so right kind of in the middle of the pandemic, which threw a little bit of a wrench towards us. So for this school year, 21-22, we used a resource still from Savvis that was similar to Digits called Envision, and we were kind of not really piloting because we all had to use it. There was really no other option for us, and our goal was to see if it was similar enough to just become our new primary resource. And through experiences this year, we found that the Envision resource was not meeting our expectations. So the teachers, reached out and wanted to explore other resource options. So therefore, a pilot timeline, which you see on the screen here, was put together to guide our process to select a primary resource that will better meet our needs in 6-8. So we're kind of 1 year ahead of the K-5 timeline for our 6-8 students and teachers. And we did already select 2 resources that we're going to pilot next year. And those 2 resources are Carnegie Learning and Big Ideas. And just like in K-5, some teachers will continue to use Envision during that pilot year. And along with the quality and rigor of the lessons, we are going to evaluate the supports each resource provides for our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students and our EL and bilingual populations.
Okay. Our kids get to take global language, and I don't know when the last time was that y'all got to hear about it, but here I am. What I wanted to say mostly about global language, when I was in middle school, it was memorizing a lot of words, and then if I memorized those words correctly, I could give my speech or do my presentation in front of the class, and then that was about it. There's a lot more science to it now, and I want you guys to know how hard your global language teachers are working. There's a set of standards. They're called ACTFL standards, and they define how we learn languages across the world. In terms of methodology, we now use this thing called Comprehensible Input, which is basically on-level exposure. If you've ever met someone who has learned a language quickly, first of all, they're probably young, but they're also exposed to it, or they're thrown into a situation when they have to. And so that's what that Comprehensible Input is. We also think about modes now. So this would be considered presentational, and as you sit there and listen, that is interpretive. But there's also interpersonal, which is just meeting somebody on the street and having a nice conversation when it doesn't have to be so formal. And so our teachers actually build these things into, and these different modes into their curriculum, and then they assess these modes as well. So they have very creative tests that might be, I'm instant messaging on the computer, because that's an interpersonal writing activity, as opposed to, like I told you about my career in Spanish, memorizing words. In terms of where we've come so far this year and where we are going, there is a new supplemental resource that the teachers brought to us and the district funded, and that's called Flangu. Not positive where they got the name, but it's basically a library of e-readers in a target language, which for us is Spanish and French. In terms of future opportunities, we are working on courses in Spanish for heritage speakers. This is extremely important and very exciting because Illinois does now have a seal of biliteracy. So our middle school curriculum is in line with those pathways toward the seal of biliteracy. And this goes both ways, this seal of biliteracy. So, in the past we have thought about having to learn English in the classroom setting as a deficit, and it is absolutely anything but that. This gives us the perfect opportunity to elevate that and say to our students who are learning English, you learn both and you actually get a seal of approval. And of course, the same thing holds for our students who are native English speakers and are learning another language. When they complete our middle school program, it's essentially considered year 1 by the high school, and they can enter the high school in year 2 of their language, English or Spanish. So, good for us. Thank you.
This was one of the most fun projects to be a part of because we had the opportunity to look at our life skills program in a full day setting for our kindergarteners. So with the kindergarten launch committee, we really explored what do kindergartners really need to be successful with life skills. We went back and forth for skills for life with a 4 or just life skills. But we really talked about like what do these kids need throughout the year. And so we landed on different focus areas, which you see up there. So they all start with be a friend, and we really focus on sharing, be a friend and including, and go through each of these focus areas, and they're timely. So at the beginning of the year, when you're meeting your classmates, you're learning how to share different materials with them, and then you're learning how to include them. These kindergartners, it's the first time they're gonna have lunch and recess, and they're outside. It's an unstructured setting to how to include others. If you see someone on the buddy bench and they need to be invited to come play, how do you have the language to invite someone to come and play with you? Be ready. We need to know how to zip our jacket and put our hat on and be ready to go home or go outside. So thinking about skills in that way too. And these are each month theme, and we go through every time students go to life skills, it goes through a process, engage, play, and make. The engage is usually a read aloud or a video to get kids thinking about the topic, and then the next time they come, they play. They role play, they have characters that they play with so that they can practice those language skills, and then they always make something. For example, the Be Calm month, they make a bracelet and they move beads over, which helps them think through how do I take time to be calm, much like you would take breaths. This is just a visual representation of how we do that. And then they get a badge, and it goes back to their classroom because we really don't want these to be taught in isolation. The whole purpose is transfer. So when it's back in their classroom, the teachers, homeroom teachers can also reinforce all these skills that we really think kindergartners need to be happy and successful in kindergarten.
Good evening. Our 6-8 life skills program for next year has expanded. It reinforces and expands not only our physical education program, but also our SEL, or second step program. As you can see up there, we have a lot of our mental, emotional, our family, social, and physical health concepts, which we do talk about in physical education, but then expand more in our 6-8 life skills curriculum. One of the biggest additions is body systems, which used to be covered by the science curriculum at one point, but now is a responsibility of health or life skills. The body systems, again, cover circulatory systems. We cover a lot of all the body systems. For the human growth and development system for 8th grade, we cover the female and male reproductive systems. We cover the central nervous systems. We cover the respiratory systems and many of the body systems that we talk about in physical education, and also when we talk about SEL and the development of the brain. We also continue talking about environmental health is one of the new units that we'll be talking about, and all these particular units are tied to the Illinois state standards. Our learning targets will be tied to the various standards and performance descriptors for health education.
So thank you for your time, and I want to thank, I love when the kids said my colleagues.
Yes.
I mean, like, these are my colleagues, I guess they're colleagues, so thank you to my colleagues. I don't know if there's any questions or.
I would just, it was great having the students here tonight totally reflect everything that you talked about with literacy, science, and advocacy all at the same time. So that was great timing. Good job, you guys. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you all, appreciate it. We have one other audible we'd like to call, so Mary and Kristen, just hang in there. Another.
Just a few more minutes.
Another minute, okay, thanks.
We're going to go to the Park District baseball field proposal.
Mr. Wexler, thank you for your patience and for joining us this evening.
Good evening. My name is Ken Wexler. I'm the park planner on staff with the Glenview Park District, and I want to thank you for letting me present this evening. Essentially, the Park District has an idea, and we'd like to get your thoughts since it's on school district property. Glenview Youth Baseball has had a long history at the Westbrook School campus for decades. We have staff and commissioners that remember playing baseball here probably 50 years ago. And what makes it special is that it's a community gathering place. When multiple games are going on, it has a festive atmosphere with a chance to catch up with your neighbors and your friends. And as the aerial photograph shows on the screen there, up until recently there were 5 baseball fields here at the Westbrook School campus. And now with the new building addition, 2 of the fields on the west side have been eliminated, leaving 3 fields. So the Park District has been looking at potential opportunities for replacement fields. And one location that we've identified is the southeast corner of the Westbrook campus, and that's shown in the yellow square in the lower right-hand corner of the aerial photo. Could you advance to the next slide, please? So this site plan shows now what, with the construction of the building addition and the parking lot on the east side, what the field arrangement will look like. And so the area we're still talking about is in the lower right-hand corner. Can you change the next slide, please? So the Park District, in partnership with GYB, is interested in creating a new baseball field at this location. And this would replace one of the 2 fields that was lost. So this is the concept plan, and it shows a proposed Mustang field in the lower right-hand corner. It's the same dimension as the field right above it. In the center, gathering area is created that would have seating, and this would be a viewing area. And then there'd be walkways to get players and parents into this central viewing area. Now, this plan is very preliminary, so if the school board supports the concept, the next step would be for the Park District to develop it further. So these next steps would include engineering to determine the stormwater requirements in the grading plan, public outreach to the neighbors, in generating cost estimates. Once the plan is developed in more detail, the Park District would come back before you for further consideration and then more formal approval. And we'd also be going through the village approval process. So the Park District would like to get some initial feedback from the school board on whether they would be in favor of having a baseball field at the southeast location.
Any questions? Diane?
Thanks for coming and thanks for proposing this. I've been very distressed hearing that we lost 2 fields to our construction project. Any parent that has had children come up playing baseball knows how essential it is to maintain a spot. I know that the fields that were lost were some of the fields that our youngest players would play games on. You mentioned a Mustang field, so are the youngest players going to be able to play on this new field as well, or do we have ideas for different fields as well?
We'd be working, I'm sorry for the feedback. We'd be working with GUIB on the programming, but they've identified the Mustang-sized field as the one that's needed.
Is there a thought as to where we might locate, because we've lost 2 fields, and I mean that's a lot of games that can't be played. Is there a thought as to where we might locate a second field?
It's sort of an open question right now, but another location we've identified is possibly Community Park West for that second field.
Another field at Community Park West?
Correct.
Interesting. So one thing I want to point out to other board members that we haven't talked about yet is just the fact that when you have baseball fields, you need places for people to use facilities. There's restrooms at this field. It looks like you have a plan to relocate the batting cages from where they presently were located.
Right. The batting cage right now is located in that central area that we want to have sort of the gathering spot. So we still need to determine where the best spot for the batting cage is. Correct.
And there's also concession stands already there that are kind of permanent in nature, where you could, if you were having a tournament, for instance, you could sell any kind of goods that you wanted to sell, beverages and whatnot.
Right. The concession stand is staying.
Right.
Right.
But you already have that.
Correct.
There. Okay. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Anybody else with anything? James?
I'll say that a lot of fun memories playing at Westbrook. One of the questions about that southeast corner, if I remember correctly, there was a little bit of a hill or some sort of significant engineering that's going to need to be regraded. Do we have any concept as to how much of an issue that may be, or how much of an opportunity that may be to kind of reconfigure that field for a 4th baseball field?
Right. So you're exactly right that it has a plateau now, and so the preliminary engineering calls for we'd probably be shaving some of that down and distributing the dirt on site to get a little bit more level playing area there. But you're right, it is a challenge, but it's something that we think we could work within the parameters.
All right. Mike?
Thank you for coming tonight. 2 questions, maybe 1 question, 1 comment. In terms of cost sharing, are you thinking you're going to come to the school board looking for funds for this?
No, we would not be coming to the school board for funding.
My second question is more for staff. Does Westbrook School use this property, these fields, from essentially that walkway in any way, shape, or form now? PE? So I think the question that kind of pops to my head is if we're not using it, why do we own it? And maybe you should take that back as a thought bubble that I'm thinking about. I'm not asking for a comment.
Right.
You take it back to Mike.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting approach. So yeah, thank you for suggesting that.
And we're looking for money to finish building our schools. You may have heard that earlier.
Mike is fundraising. No, I just wanted to thank you as well. I didn't have a kid who played baseball, but I think this is a good thing. I mean, the more kids that can be involved in baseball or other sports, we should definitely support and be behind.
This plan
Thank you.
seems to make a lot of sense.
So, I mean, I think the general consensus here is the school board, it loves to be great partners with the Park District, and we're plenty happy to be able to, at this point, say that looks like a nice plan.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time tonight. And we'll be in touch with staff to coordinate more.
Thank you. All right, I'd really like to get to the student services presentation.
Mary and Kristen, thank you so much.
Thank you for
wanted to
waiting.
get through some of our invited guests. Thank you.
You guys gonna be able to listen?
Save some, still got the
You,
budget.
you have all the time you want.
That's gonna drive for us. He's a good colleague.
Very good colleague.
He's gonna tap one. Okay, we're gonna begin.
Back one.
Oh, go back. Actually, I have things to say about that, sorry. All right. So, just go ahead and pay attention up there. You can listen to my words. In the winter of 2017, the interim student services directors provided the board with an update of what was needed in student services as a starting point to redefining the department. The interims understood the lack of systems, lack of consistency in programming, and the overall connection between these and student performance. It is because of this, we ask these guiding questions and we provide a greater understanding to you of the work that has been done and the why behind it and what still needs to be accomplished.
As we know, all of our work is always tied to our mission and vision of the strategic plan. And also linking our actions to our core values is very important, and we'll be hitting on each of these areas today in the presentation. So one of our biggest partnerships in student services is our partnership with NSSED, or now called True North. We have been with NSSED since its inception in 1960. And we know there was a name change this past summer that better reflects the mission and vision that includes evidence-based programming and increased inclusive opportunities. Just so you have an idea of True North's current operating status, you can see there are 18 member districts that belong to True North. True North operates under a financial model that includes both direct and indirect costs. Some of the examples of direct costs would be our membership fees and professional learning that is based on general education enrollment, and their programs and services are direct costs. Some examples of indirect costs would be payroll for about 75% of their direct office staff, overhead, and that tuition based on or overhead based on program usage.
So from 2010 to 2016, the Student Service Department had numerous directors who stayed only for a short time. Since 2017 to present day, the leadership in the Student Service Department has been consistent. And thanks to you, the Board of Education, in appointing Kristen to my role for next year, the consistency will continue. In the fall of 2017, while working with the Cabinet team to address budget deficits and find inefficiencies within all of our departments, a team of 40 individuals and I conducted a comprehensive root cause analysis to better understand the full extent of lack of systems and inconsistencies within the Student Service Department, as well as why we were one of 4 districts in the state at that time that held the disproportionate status.
So with any good audit, we always want it to result in actionable items on our part. This audit, as Mary mentioned, was conducted in her first year, and along with the audit and our strategic plan, it's really guided us in identifying areas that we need to work on. So in analyzing the why behind some of the root causes that the audit revealed, it seemed that much of the work done in the Student Services Department was done in silos. So 3 overarching themes emerged that guide our actions and reflections. So the first root cause was infrastructure. So we question, do we have the systems in place to support positive outcomes for students? The second root cause was consensus, the human factor, the mindset and belief systems that guide our actions. And the third root cause was about implementation. Have we assessed our PD needs and trained staff appropriately? So these themes remain the same as we do our work, but the actionable items are updated based on our progress.
So our action items also include reflecting on our work with True North, because our partnership impacts all 3 root causes. While they continue to support us in many ways, staff often see True North as the special education experts operating separately than district programming. And this speaks to ownership, one of our root causes. As we work on increasing ownership and consensus building, we need to recognize and celebrate that we have many of our own experts within the district that could help build and implement a responsive system.
So after gaining a much better understanding of the district during my first year, understanding low student achievement, high dependency on the special education cooperative, and departments working in silos, it was extremely important to start to build capacity within the district. We are a large enough school district that we should be able to have a strong student service department that works together with all of our other departments with the same expectations for all students. So the most important part of our work was to ensure we always aligned with the district's mission, vision, and core values, and the strategies under the strategic plan. A different focus than previous leadership in the student service department was to connect the work with the focus on teaching and learning. This visual represents how the inner workings of the student service department is always growing and improving for better outcomes for students. Having these services as part of our district allows the cohesiveness and expertise to be in-house instead of external. Over the course of the 4 years, we strategically built the department to support this work. Leadership, sharing the same vision and working together on behalf of all students and families has always been part of our work. We work as part of the teaching and learning team to improve instruction for all students and building our own programming that aligns to our core instruction and provides all students with opportunities to be educated with their peers in their community schools. Hiring our own related service staff and assistive technology facilitator ensures that their focus is on only our students. They are able to attend our professional learning opportunities and to be a part of our school communities. This connectiveness supports the whole child. When you build capacity, it affects students' abilities to be included in their home districts. This graph represents the number of students in private therapeutics placements over the years. We will always believe in the full continuum of services, as some students do need something different more than our district can offer. But that is always decided by the IEP team after many revisions of their IEP, coaching supports implemented, and performance data reviewed regularly and deeply. Having assistant principals in all of our buildings and instructional coaches support students has reduced the number of students needing an outside placement. When we tie these supports and services to how our dollars are spent, we can see that we are in control of our costs. It's important to understand maintenance of effort, or MO, per federal law. A school district needs to maintain the amount of money they spend on special education overall. And if we don't, we need to file reasons why we are not maintaining that amount of money. And there are some acceptable reasons. From the years 14-15 through 17-18, the district continued to grow their special education cost. And if we continued in this model, we would most likely have seen an increase of 5% higher each year, simply due to NSSED costs. Beginning in the school year 18-19, we began the process of building our capacity and growing our own programming to meet student needs. This continues today. As we build capacity, we believe it addresses our root causes from that earlier audit that Kristen spoke to. We have built an infrastructure to support our kids, and we are addressing our belief systems. Through this process, we are doing what is right for our students and controlling our costs. As IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, continues to be reauthorized, building capacity is and improving services has always been a big part of that law. This past school year, NSSED, as Kristen said, became True North and shifted their financial model. This shift really did not benefit us. They are continuing to review their financial model in attempts to make it more equitable for all. But for our district, we're at a disadvantage in terms of this financial model due to being a larger elementary district and a higher population of low income. Our usage has decreased significantly, but costs remain high per our usage. We are exploring ways to utilize the cooperative in its current model as an education cooperative, focusing on broader support than only special education and aligning what they can offer to our strategic plan and our needs. One being the equity work that is ahead of us. And at our next board meeting, Dr. Schneider, as part of our membership costs, will kick off this work with a board presentation.
So beyond the numbers is really the message of all really does mean all here in District 34. Building capacity reaches all students and improves learning for all. The research is really encouraging when you see the benefits of an inclusive environment for all students across the entire D34 community. The ability to have ownership of how we build our responsive system is important. When you walk through our doors, we want all children to be part of our community and be an integral part of our teaching and learning. The following slides will show you the real why and capture better than any words could ever capture. You may see students in the following slides that would have historically been considered for programs outside of District 34, but now they are part of All Means All. They have group assemblies, they're in music class, Halloween parties, academic projects, relationship building activities, all within their neighborhood school rather than a separate program.
The work behind our parent community facilitator and the impact it has had on our systems and the positive outcomes for our families and students is extraordinary. She has worked with the individuals that oversaw the Deborah Gelfand Fund to convert it to a 501c3 foundation, now known as the Deborah Gelfand Children's Foundation, which has supported numerous students and their families. After the development of the foundation, through connections with other social service agencies in the Glenview area, the Glenview Necessities Network was created. This network streamlines supports and services for D34 families. During the pandemic, there were numerous parent focus and support groups organized by our facilitator to address needs and ensure fluid communication between the Student Service Department and parents. Our facilitator works with many families of students with special needs to foster communications, build relationships, and assist with obtaining outside community resources. Our IEP process has become a more collaborative approach where parents truly feel valued. This is done through using a facilitated IEP process. Our award-winning D34 Parent Connect addresses timely topics to support parents in a variety of ways. Their focus is on supporting families as they manage the important work of raising their children. We want all parents to know we are in partnership with them no matter what the needs are. We continue to build and evolve our Student Service Council with parent liaisons, monthly meetings to conduct an open, honest conversations around the work in the department.
So what's next? We'll continue to work on building a responsive system that includes an equity lens, high quality professional development, and careful analysis of cost spending.
So back where we began with our strategic plan and how our work aligns with the strategic plan. We have maintained overall cost, reduced our internal student service budget. We've increased Medicaid reimbursements, which has offset our district budget. We've connected supports and services and built relationships with students and families. That's our analysis. Any questions?
Natalie?
Well, I don't think anybody's surprised that I have a couple comments. So, I mean, John and I are the historians of the district because we're the board members who've been here before you guys got here. here. So we've seen this progression that you've talked about, and let's just say you brought us into modern times, right? Before you came, we didn't think about all means all, and kids were segregated. And I speak from experience because I have an IEP student who entered the district in early childhood and had an IEP until 8th grade. So I'm really, I've lived this with you guys. You're building capacity within the district to serve our students makes all the difference in the world. Our kids with all our diverse learners with varying needs can go to their neighborhood school, ride the bus, sit in the same classroom with their peers, and oftentimes, as you illustrated in the photos, their peers have no idea what extra supports are needed to facilitate that. I wanted to talk about also that cogs and gears, which was great. I love that. It shows our district on an operational level. But I think you could impose that same graphic on the students because of the work that you have done. All the students have a place, and they all work together, and I just wanted to say that. I think you guys are being a little humble about the work that you've done. You've done you've transformed student services in the time that you've been here. And I just want to, for the record, say that your parent facilitator's name is Karen Hitzman, and
Yes,
she's
thank
made
you.
a very huge impact in the 1 year that she has held that title. But she was kind of doing this work without holding that title for a couple years before she even officially joined the district. I just wanted to say that. I'm sure other people might have questions, so those are the main points I wanted to make.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm amazed that you were able to accomplish all this in the 5 years you've been with our district. So we're saying,
Alone accomplishing.
I know.
It's a team of people. I can see.
It's amazing though that how far we've come from when you got here, and that speaks to the amount of work that's been done, and we'll carry forward with Kristen because the work's not finished. We're just starting.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for waiting so long. All right, next we're going to move on to fiscal year 2023 tentative budget and call for a public hearing.
Yes, thank you. So this is the first presentation for the FY23 budget season, tentative budget, as you just said. This bar graph shows our total revenues of $106 million and expenses of $140 million by fund. We've got 9 funds. Ed fund is our general fund. Most of our revenues and expenses flow through it, but you'll see our capital improvement fund also has $10.2 million in revenues, which was an earlier estimate for the bond issue, and $50 million in expenses, which, based on the conversation tonight, you can anticipate to go down in the final budget presentation. Here we're just showing revenues and expenses in the operating funds and pie chart, just noting that revenues now make up 86% of our revenues. Local property taxes mostly in the local category, and salary and benefits are now at 80%. And with this late hour, I won't go through all the details of these local revenue assumptions, but the one I'd like to point out specifically is for the 2021 levy, new property is at $445 million, 430 of which is the anticipated EAV from the Glen TIF coming off, and then another 15 million in additional new property. The other point I'll make is student fees has gone up to 2.5 million. Typically that's at about $1 million because we anticipate 1.5 million between the two sort of school years for full day kindergarten fees. Here looking at state and federal revenue assumptions, a lot of this is very similar to FY22. The only change that I'll point out here is federal funding. From ESSER, we've got 1.3 anticipated both revenue and expense for FY22. When it comes to our expense assumptions, big one that we just talked about that drives our costs, our people and positions. For FY '23, we've got a total of 717 total FTE. The other point I'll make here is that benefits, we've got a low rate of 2% increase built in for now, but you can count on that increasing toward the final budget, unfortunately, as well. And then again, the construction costs of $50 million I anticipate will come down toward our final budget presentation. This is just a snapshot of all funds, revenue on the top, expenses on the bottom. Across all funds, we show a almost $35 million deficit, but this is based on, the board issuing debt in the previous year and planning on spending it in FY '23. So that's all by design. And finally, looking at our operating funds, we're showing a surplus of $5.4 million, which is an improvement for what you saw from CFAC in January during the five-year financial forecast. This mostly comes from attrition, lower amount of students that we anticipate, and therefore lower amount of staff to cover those classrooms and that instruction. I would imagine that this shift will present itself in the updated five-year projection. Revenues and expenses are different, and I think the overall trend line will be similar, but I think you'll see that the result of this FY '23 budget will have a positive impact in the years to come. Potential refinements, we're just getting going with support staff negotiations, so the results of that negotiation hopefully will be incorporated into the final budget. Any changes in ESSER funding and reimbursements, like I say, the calendar year '23 health benefit rate increase, which usually comes to the board for approval in August, will likely have an impact, and those rates will be reflected in the final. Interest income should go up a little bit in the final. Food service, we're still waiting to see if there's any dollars from a federal standpoint that could provide a free lunch again, something similar to what years past, but we'll see. Also, costs keep going up, obviously, when it comes to commodities, so those food costs could potentially increase, and then construction costs like we've been talking about. Just to highlight a couple pieces in this presentation, we think the resources here in the budget are aligned to our strategic goals for the year. Revenues in this particular year are exceeding the expenses, $50 million in construction costs and $1.3 million in federal funding through ESSER, and that is for HVAC equipment and some learning labs, and you saw that HVAC offset in the Nicholas presentation. Requirements to establish the budget, we've got to place the tentative budget on public display, which we're going to ask the board to vote on next month. That'll be on display for 30 days, posted on our website, and then we have to hold a hearing, in this case, for in September. That's not for a couple months, so the next steps would be in June to accept the tentative, authorize the notice of the publication, and then we'll present the final budget in August for approval in September.
Any questions? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
We'll hear about this for the next few meetings, right?
Yes.
All right, let's move to prevailing rate of wage.
So this is also just sort of a standard, according to the law, and be in compliance with the law. The board is asked to pass this resolution each year. Sort of takes the Cook County prevailing wage and says that any business that the board does, we make sure that vendors know they're to pay that prevailing wage in all the work we do, mainly construction. So this is to stay in compliance for the year.
Okay, thanks. Intra-fund transfers, Eric?
Yep, again, something the board gets on an annual basis. It's just sort of tracking what allocation between accounts are made throughout the course of the year. So we're asking for board approval in June to approve those transfers within lines within anyone's sort of given budget and allocation.
And that's because the budget was a reflection of where we were in September, and it's changed since we've gotten here, right?
Exactly. So as the year progresses, things change, and some of the department heads might want to transfer funds to cover, expenses that come up in a different category.
All right. Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, that doesn't affect the overall, right? You're just moving pieces around into 9 buckets.
Exactly.
To try and make sure there's the right balance. Correct.
Yeah, within sort of individual budgets. So these aren't even between funds. Any inter-fund transfer comes to the board by
these are
approval from
Intra
resolution.
funds.
These are intra.
Yeah. And then now we have the annual certificate of hazardous conditions.
So every year, we ask the board to approve the list of hazardous conditions. In the past, we've brought new hazard, crossings to the board. This year, it's the same list that has been brought forth in the past, no changes.
Any other questions? No? Thanks. Good. All right, I'm going to move along to audience comments. Kathy, do we have any audience comments right now? All right. Then I will move to the report section. I have the number 1 FOIA report, number 2 True North Board meeting report, number 3 22-23 professional development plan, number 4 the phase 1 construction change order report, number 5 the monthly budget report, number 6 the current year financial projections, number 7 the referendum expense report, number 8 the authorization of advance payment of summer warrants, and number 9 the following meeting agenda. Are there any questions?
I don't see a FOIA report on the agenda.
In our agenda, so is it just missing?
We probably didn't have any FOIAs.
Okay.
There you go.
So I got pulled off of my agenda. Eric?
Can I make a comment on just one of the reports?
Certainly.
The number 5, current year financial projections. I just want to comment that we're seeing an $11.5 million surplus in this current year. That's a reflection of both some of the property tax monies we were due last year that have just come in, and it's the incremental property tax revenue that the CFAC contemplated coming in the fall, but actually started coming in the spring here, in addition to some other factors. So I just wanted to point that out. That's 11.5 in addition to the 5.4 million that was just pointed out in the tentative budget. If all those things kind of come to fruition at the end of next fiscal year, we'd see an additional 17 million added to our fund balance. Just thought that was important to point out.
Yeah, and part of that is the timing issue of the TIF coming off early.
Yep.
It's good news. That's why I'd like to have CFAC run a progression for us, because that'll inform our decision on construction going forward. Great. It's good to end on some good news there. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions about the reports? Any other business? All right, I'd like to declare the meeting adjourned.